My name is Greg Endres. I work at the Carrington Research Extension Center as a NDSU Extension Cropping System Specialist. And I'd like to talk a bit about some of our work with cover crops, specifically using winter rye as a cover crop preceding either dry bean or soybean. So we've conducted trials, in fact 4 years, with each of the studies to examine the impact of rye before either dry bean or soybean are grown. So I'll start with the dry bean. Actually, in both of these cases, we're doing this not so much for the benefits in the fall, although we assume some, but mostly benefits in the spring, just prior to when the crops are planted and when they're grown. The benefits clearly are reduced in soil erosion, and early in the season it can help with weed suppression, may help with soil moisture management, especially excessive soil moisture, and there's certainly other benefits as well. So with the dry bean, we've worked on this study, and we were answering the following questions. One is, if we had the system of rye before and early in the season of dry bean, will it have a negative impact on the dry bean, in particular pinto bean? Answer is no. When managed correctly, we can enjoy the benefits of the cover crop plus maintain the yield in pinto beans. The real management factor that we need to consider, though, is that as the rye is growing and we're getting ready to plant dry beans, we need to terminate it on a timely basis so we have adequate topsoil moisture for effectively establishing the pinto bean. So that's probably the biggest caution with this. Just be watching things and be ready to pull the trigger in terminating the rye. If not, it can have dire consequences on the dry bean yield if the rye takes up too much moisture that the pinto bean needs. And then other benefits include the weed management. Some people wonder about that, but we found that typically we have adequate weed suppression. I won't say control, 100% control, because we can't do that with cover crops, but it's a nice supplement to the other resources that we have, such as herbicides and crop rotation, etc. So yes, to cover crop, rye in particular, in dry bean, it will work. On soybean, questions often come about this time of year. They usually start. They're asking, if I plan to have rye grown before I plant soybean the following year, what rate should I use and when should I plant it? And then we reply with another question. What are your goals? And hopefully the goals are the same as what I mentioned earlier. Reduction of soil erosion, maybe management of excessive soil moisture, weed suppression, maybe it's some forage production, and others. So NDSU has some suggestions on dates and rates. The suggestions are you can plant August through October, and rates from 20 pounds to 90 pounds. Well, that's not really precision planting. So that's why we conducted this 4-year study, just to help people identify the goals and then give them some guidelines on rates and dates. So we did the work, and ultimately what we found, we looked at 2 planting periods. One was the last half of September, and the other was in October. And then the choices on planting rates for winter rye, 25, 50, and 75 pounds. So what do we find? We found that planting that last half of September with the highest rate, in this case 75 pounds, gave us the best benefits when it comes to ground cover when we measured that just before we planted the soybeans the following year. It also gave us the most weed suppression. In this case, we were working with primarily foxtail and kochia, and we saw suppression of 75 to low 80%. Also, we saw no negative impact on the soybean. Our soybean averaged over the 4 years over 50 bushel, actually 52 bushel. So the system works well, but it does require management. And then one other key factor on the study was, well, what do we need for a rye stand out there before the soybean are planted for these benefits? We found that we need to have a minimum of over 1/2 million plants, which is the equivalent of about 12 plants per square foot, and ideally from 600,000 or more would be beneficial based on our work, which is about 14 plants per square foot. So we thought that was really important information because you can do all these things, adjust planting rates and dates and varieties chosen. There's a lot of factors, but ultimately we want to see people establish their winter rye at a minimum of 12 plants per square foot in order to derive as many benefits as possible.